Okay, so I'm so glad that you guys are joining us this morning and that hopefully there are students joining us. I'm here at the Symphony offices. I have our principal clarinetist, Darleen Carl-Beck, here with us. Before we get started talking about today's instrument, the clarinet, I did want to make sure and share with you that the clarinet is part of the woodwind family. And there are other instruments in the woodwind family, as you can see on the screen here, are the oboe, the flute, the bassoon, and the piccolo. So those instruments all make up the woodwind family, but today we're going to focus on the clarinet. So without further ado, a few other things. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat at any time, and then we'll also have additional time to answer some of those questions. This is our first time doing this, so we're gonna be flexible, we're gonna have fun. We don't know what's gonna happen, we'll see, and we're just excited to do this and hope that we all have a good time. I'm gonna turn it over to Darleen now. She is our principal clarinet player, and that means that she plays the first part and she is kind of in charge of the section. So Darleen, take it away.
Hi everyone. It's really fun to be able to do a Zoom during this time. So the clarinet is a reed instrument, and I'm just going to bring that a little closer, up close and personal, because it has this piece of wood back here. That's called a reed. Now, just a little bit about a reed. Reeds grow in nature like grasses, but these reeds grow taller than me, in fact 6 feet tall. Woodwind players get them, they cut them down. So this is a tube cut in half. They cut them down and they continue to cut them down until they're the size of the reed. Now one end of the reed is really papery thin. If I bring it closer, you might be able to see that. There are some limits with the Zoom camera. So when a clarinet player, a saxophone player, has a reed, they put it on something called a mouthpiece, which is a hard rubber, and then they hold it in place and they blow through. Now they're blowing through a tiny space between the reed and the mouthpiece. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a small space between it, very similar to the small space that you might make between your hands if you wanted to make a blade of grass whistle. And it's not an easy thing to do, not as easy as strapping a reed to a clarinet for sure. And of course, when I have an audience, it's harder. There we go. So very similar to putting the piece of grass between your hands. Kind of a fun picnic thing to do, as long as the people around you don't get annoyed. All right, so when we add more clarinet to that mouthpiece and reed, we get a sound that is more clarinet-like, but not nearly as pleasing as a full clarinet. So when we add all the different pieces of the clarinet, so it comes apart here, and it comes apart at the bell, which is just for resonating. It makes this sound. Now, the lowest note on the clarinet is the note that I started with. And you get the lowest note by adding fingers, because you make the clarinet longer. So when I put all those fingers down, I have all my fingers down. That's our lowest note on the clarinet. Now the highest note on the clarinet is different based on how old you are. If you're in middle school or high school, it's really common to play up into this range. As you get older, you get to play higher notes. Now, the last couple notes are not pretty, and that's because I don't play them very often. I can say I've only played them once or twice in the symphony in my life. So that's why they don't sound as good, honestly. So, with the clarinet, and you heard the highest and the lowest, one of the cool things about the clarinet is that clarinetists can play super soft. and they do it more easily than other instruments. So we get to play in this feathery soft area. I don't know if you could hear that with all the Zoom video transmission, but it's one of the gifts that clarinetists get to enjoy. Next, I'd like to play a little game with you and share with you some of the characters that clarinetists get to portray in their music. One character could be two things, and you get to choose and know that there's no right or wrong. The first one is this melody a walking melody, or when you listen to it, does it make you think of running? The second little snippet of music I want to play for you, I'm going to ask you to envision someone talking while it's being played, or someone actually singing it. And I can do that with this piece because it's by Mozart, and Mozart actually wrote a lot of music for vocalists. So in this next little section of music, I want you to see if you hear a little 3-year-old in a pink ballerina uniform, costume I should say, or if you hear a grandpa. Remember, there's no right or wrong. Music composers are sometimes telling a story, and sometimes we read a story into it, and both are okay and good. The next little section of music that I'm going to play for you, I want you to imagine that this music is setting the stage to a movie. And one of the options that I have here is a sneaky scene in a movie. And the other scene is a kid having to clean their room. So you choose which of those settings this music fits. The last piece or portion of a piece that I'm going to play for you is actually part of the music that the symphony's working on this week. It's called Mozart's Gran, G-R-A-N, Partita. And it's just for woodwind instruments, so there's no string players. And I want you to consider, does it sound like music that might be played at a party? Or music that might be played when you're supposed to go to bed? So in the last little bit of our time together, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about learning to play an instrument. I have to say that I knew pretty early on that I wanted to play this instrument a lot and that I wanted to make a career out of it. Learning to play an instrument has given me so many opportunities. One is really simple. Whenever I feel like I need to change my mood, I can pick up the clarinet and I can find a piece of music that suits the mood that I want to be in. So I can have fun picking what I play, and the first problem, of course, is learning how to read music. So I encourage you all to embrace whatever musical lessons that your school provides and your parents provide. Being in band in school was a total joy. Every day I got to go in and be surrounded by sounds, not only the sounds that I made and the vibrations of the clarinet, but there's something that's really cool about when you're playing with someone else. There's the obvious sounds that you all hear, but there's something else called the difference tone. It's kind of a technical term, but I got to tell you, over the pandemic, it is what I've missed the most. So it's what the sounds that happen when we play together. So that is just a very cool thing that I enjoyed throughout my school years. The second thing about being in band was that I got to do some really cool field trips. I won't name them all, but you get to go on different field trips than the other kids in school. Another element of playing in band was that there is a ready-made group of people that I fit into. Some of my lifelong friends have been musicians, and I wouldn't have them if I didn't play an instrument. During this e-learning time, a lot of teachers have been doing mini lessons on YouTube, and with your parents' approval, I encourage you all to consider Googling how to play piano or guitar, or if you had a little recorder, which is one of those simple instruments without keys on it, and see what lessons are out there. The opening video that we played for you was actually from a teacher who posts a ton of videos on how to play clarinet, and she's very funny and she makes it very joyous. We have another video that we would like to share with you of a musician who is a very well-known jazz player. And before Margot puts that video on, I have to ask you all to turn up your volume because her voice is very soft, and she teaches how to improvise on the clarinet in short lessons.
And while we're watching that, Darleen, there is a question in the chat. What is your favorite piece of music? So while we watch the video, maybe think about what you want to share as your favorite piece of music.
Got it.
I could have printed that up, but that's not what the lesson is. The lesson form is obligation. So, that's your melody. Step one. You have to establish the melody. Now, you're going to change that melody. What's the simplest way to change that melody? Step two, the rhythm. You change the rhythm. How do you change the rhythm? You either add notes or subtract notes. That's how you change the rhythm. So, you go from two. What? Yeah, it's that simple. You just change the melody. Alright? You just get some improvisation. Alright, people say, oh my goodness gracious, how do you do that on the improvisation? No, I can't do that at all. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can make a mistake in improv. You just gotta resolve it the right way. Alright? Because you're changing it. That's step two. Step three. Let's put some fillers in. Alright? What's a filler? It is just what it sounds like. A filler. It doesn't have to be complicated. Make it triplet. Yeah. That's it. And it doesn't have to be there. It could be Alright? That's your filler. Now, you have to strategically place that filler. But if you're thinking melodically, you'll know where to put it. For instance.
Okay. Darleen, do you want to tell us what your favorite piece of music is?
Sure, I often get asked this question. And just to wrap up that video, I know she spoke very softly. At home, if you were to listen to that video, it's completely okay in terms of volume. But when you share it, for some reason, it loses some of its depth and understanding. And I just encourage you all to embrace the different ways to take on a musical instrument. And I hope that in my playing and in our examples, I've inspired you to continue to embrace playing, embrace the challenges, the time that it requires, and the fun that it has to offer. So the question was, my favorite piece of music. You know, that's a tricky one. It's like asking a parent or, who's your favorite kid? If I'm spending time with a certain piece of music or a certain kid, then they're my favorite kid at that time. If I'm spending time with another piece of music, that becomes my favorite piece of music for that time. So I don't have one favorite. Would you please play some more? Let's see. Well, I certainly can play more from the piece that we're going to play. Do we have any more questions before I play?
I don't see any more in the chat, so maybe another short piece of music, a little short excerpt, and if any more questions show up, we can answer them after that, or if not, we may just end our time together.
Sure. Sometimes music is less rhythmic, and it's a lot more free. In the opening of this piece we're going to play this weekend, so I will answer that question first, all right? So yeah, most clarinetists in the symphony all clarinetists in the symphony play on wood clarinets. In a beginner's band, most of the clarinetists play on a plastic clarinet. It is more durable for weather and dropping, because accidents do happen. We try not to have it happen, but it does happen. And so we start out on plastic and transfer to wood as we get better and more advanced.
And what's the difference between the two?
Oh, well, they look the same from the audience because it's all a black material. And the wood actually vibrates differently than the plastic does. So when I play a plastic clarinet, I feel little vibrations against my teeth and I feel vibrations in my fingers, and you hear a certain sound. And the same is true when you play the other type of clarinet, and they just sound different. Most people like the ringing quality of a clarinet and the warmth of the sound more than a plastic.
Interesting.
Good question. So in the opening of this piece, the clarinet is kind of like a conversation. Everybody else plays, and then the clarinet gets to stand all by themselves. And then everybody else plays all by themselves, or I should say together. And then the clarinet again gets to speak up and say, and again, the rest of the group goes yada, 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 yada. It's very different from the other excerpts that I played for you before. Any other questions? I'll take any questions. Well, almost any. So I started in 4th grade. I think some of you are younger than 4th grade, and some of you might actually be in 4th grade. And I started out on a plastic clarinet, and I played every day and just followed along in the program and found a lot of joy and love of making music.
This has been so wonderful. Darleen, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, classes that came to join us. And for those of you that are watching later, hopefully you will have just as much fun. You can email me questions if you think of them later, and we might be able to get some responses from Darleen, and I can send them back to you over email. And have so much fun making music. I know it's a hard time right now. We can't all play together all as much as we want to, but hopefully soon, and you can still listen to music at home and enjoy it on your own. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.